Spiritual states. Hello, we are continuing our series of shows, Spiritual States. Hello, Dr. Laitman. Hello. Today, I'd like to talk to you about Sodom and Gomorrah. Everyone knows the sin of Sodom. Everyone's familiar with the cities of sin, Sodom and Gomorrah. Without plunging into detail, everyone knows. But here we're talking about the spiritual meaning of these concepts, Sodom and Gomorrah, and as known, in the wisdom of Kabbalah, every word has its spiritual meaning, and in general we're talking about spiritual states. So, obviously these things also manifested in our world as the wisdom of Kabbalah states, but we won't really get into the corporeal things, but we'd like to talk about the spiritual root of things. So what is the spiritual root of this state? We can call it state, right? Nah, it's a state that actually somewhat exists in each of us, because all in all, in the world, there are two forces, the quality of reception and the quality of bestowal. The quality of reception is in all levels of the still, vegetative, and animate nature of human nature, and we see it in all of its manifestations. The true quality of bestowal is something that we don't see at all, as though it does not exist. This is what appears as the upper force, the force of the Creator that enlivens everything, controls everything, revolves everything. But we don't see that force. We only see the egoistic forces that act on all levels, each in a certain direction, for the sake of its own benefit. This is the nature of our world. Its inner force is the force of the Creator that enlivens all matter with its energy, but we don't see it. These aren't forces that we can talk about, grasp, measure. So spiritual qualities, they differ from corporeal qualities in that they do not occur for the sake of their generator, meaning that if a person does something, he always does it necessarily to his benefit, to gain something from it. If he'll be told, do it not to your own benefit, then he will not be able to do it, not to gain anything from it. He'll be able to do something in order not to be punished, so it's in order to gain from it anyway, etc., etc. But whatever we do, and in general, everything that we see in nature that's surrounding us occurs specifically for the sake of someone or something. We don't see and can't see any of their qualities because we don't have the corresponding qualities to grasp them. We don't have the quality of bestowal, unconditional love, something that you get nothing in return. No. So it's an egoistic, our world is an egoistic world, and the spiritual is an altruistic one. And actually, what's written in all of the stories of the Bible tells us about the battle between these two forces. Yeah. So, in these two forces, there are completely egoistic actions where a person understands that he does everything that he does only for his own sake, and altruistic actions, spiritual actions, where he does it completely not for himself, by no means for himself, not to any degree, so that it will not be directed toward or will return to him. We can't make these kinds of calculations, but gradually we can acquire such a nature with the help of certain habits by drawing upon ourselves the upper altruistic force, and it works on us and gives us the ability to act this way too, not for our own sake, actually not for our own sake. And so this is to the measure to which we will receive an influence from this altruistic force. Sodom is a place near the Dead Sea, famous for there partially happening some biblical stories. They were famous for their lifestyle, in that all the citizens there needed to live according to certain conditions, to certain rules. And the rule was, you don't help others in anything. This is a certain form of human relations. That it's clear to us that people are in a relationship with each other in order to get some kind of benefit out of it for themselves, either by trading, by exchanging forces, exchanging something that you make. It doesn't matter what. And there is a different approach to life where I don't touch you, you don't touch me. And we're talking about all levels, absolutely. Not a blade of grass, not a piece of nothing. You're not allowed to ask others for, and this is under complete prohibition. And this is a very interesting principle of interaction, as if the interaction of people, I not for you and you not for me, in nothing and in anything. He who does not keep this, he is simply thrown out of that society. Yeah, he's put to death immediately. So it was a law. So if I want, I help. If I don't, no, you can't even have a thought about that. Meaning, this is the nature, the condition of the people that live according to this principle, the principle of Sodom. So this is a principle that exists in each of us too. Well, if you use it to a certain extent, then it's not Sodom. So it has to be absolute. Right. Absolutely. You're not allowed to help anyone in anything. It's hard to imagine such a society, even today. And the Bible gives an example to such a society. Well, that's a bit clear. When you tell a person about Sodom or Gomorrah, then it's associated usually with some kind of sexual deviations, distortions. Well, this is, of course, a Christian interpretation, but in the Talmud, it really says that it was written in the 3rd, 4th, 5th centuries, and it says there that these cities were destroyed especially for the hate of strangers, for not taking in guests. Yeah, this was the expression of these things. I'm not allowed to take someone in as a guest, to give something, help somehow, not even to maybe help or direct, meaning on any level of interaction, I don't interact with any other person because I'm not about to help them in any way or get any kind of help from them, meaning it's mutual. It works in both directions. I not for you and you not for me. Today in our world, there are also such rejections towards strangers. No, but it doesn't limit you. It doesn't force you to put a fence between you and your relationship with another person. But in such a society, it is completely impossible that there is any kind of relationship between people, only within a clan, only with the family, etc. So it was as follows. Any stranger you can stone, abuse. Anyone who invites a stranger to a wedding, he will be punished by being completely undressed. And also, a Sodom judge needs to make it so that every citizen of Sodom has to make it so that anyone who leaves, any stranger who leaves, will leave without a penny. Well, you're talking about those that didn't keep these things, but the place Sodom is known as a unique place. There were no other such rules in any other place, only there. Well, the rule is expressed in one of the four types of human character, which is mine is mine and yours is yours. Also, there's three other types of relations between people, and I'd like to go over them in order to better understand what is this principle about. The principle of Sodom is the worst because it does not allow people to be in touch with one another, even if it's in some kind of, even if it's in a bad way. People don't want to have any kind of connection with each other, but only within their family or clan, but that's it. So it's worse than robbery. Mine is mine and yours is even better. Is better, of course, because in this way you're in some kind of a relationship with the other person. You learn from them, receive from them, you exchange something. Well, people robbed, fought. It was necessary for their development, but here, no. Here, I have no relation to you, and you have no relation to me. And we can draw a conclusion that therefore the Creator and nature erased these cities. Yeah, it's a dead-end vector of human development. Were to develop in this direction, it would end very quickly. So the sages that discovered these states, they wrote about them, and that's it. They said only that something like that can't repeat itself. We don't need anything from that. It's only simply in order to discuss it and draw a conclusion that the lack of relations between people is harmful. And there were no other such states in history. No, only case in history that's described in the Bible and that shows us that due to the lack of connection between people is the worst state, most corrupted. And it says that each of us has to go through all the states that are written about in the Torah, so we don't need to go through that again? No, we don't need to. Our world is so interconnected between all of its parts, nations, governments, that no one can part. So how is the story about the wife of Lot related to this, that she looked back and turned into a salt pillar? Does it mean that we needn't look into these past states? Of course. We needn't look into these past states, aspire for them, because we will turn into a salt pillar. Because it's interesting, all the other states that we learn about, like the Exodus from Egypt, that a person always comes out, because there's a way out. But out of this situation, there's no way out, because you don't exchange anything with anyone, there's nothing. You really turn into a salt pillar, into matter that doesn't rot. So it's interesting that in our world, they wrote about these results in this way. You preserve yourself in that state, and therefore it has no continuity into the future. Well, the main scene then maybe... There's a story that in the book of prophets it's mentioned that Sodom and Gomorrah are mentioned as an example of the wrath of the Creator. And so what follows is that in every generation you can say that there is the expression of it, but there was Abraham's debate with the Creator, argument that if we will find 10 righteous there, then you won't destroy the cities. So if you can explain. Of course, because at least there's some kind of seed. If there's already some kind of seed of altruistic movement toward each other, then you can leave that state, as corrupted as it might seem to us, frozen, preserved, that there's no way out of it. But if there, deep inside, there's some kind of sprouts that start developing, and in the future they might turn into something, then you need to leave it and not destroy these cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. But as we know from the Bible, there was a corresponding examination, and they came to the conclusion that there is not such an amount of righteous there, and therefore nothing good can develop from them. If people continue to completely cut themselves off from each other, building fences and walls between them, then this state needs to be destroyed. It can't give any positive results on the way of humanity, regardless of the path that it takes, how hard it might be, a path of sins, etc., but still it's some kind of interaction between people, relationship. But here you don't have that, and therefore this state has to be completely destroyed, and all other states will exist and develop until they will reach a state that it will be possible to correct. So sometimes it's hard to understand that war is theft, that these are better states. But if we look at it from the side, then we really see that those that conquered, they gave them their culture. There's some kind of development life. Right, were it not for the Romans and Greeks that conquered half the world, then today we would have been different. Like Europe conquered all those African countries, etc. We see that it gave certain development. So even though that they acted by, unacceptable methods, maybe, it doesn't matter. Each works according to their point of development. But that's how we develop. Why was Lot not destroyed? Lot is a relative of Abraham, meaning it is such a lack, the kind of lack of his participation with others does not bring humanity to a state where it cannot be corrected. He is included, even though that he was in Sodom, but still he took in strangers, he treated them differently, and therefore such an awakening in a person where he can nonetheless somehow communicate with others, it's worthy of correction. And therefore, Lot was pulled out, but not his wife. She, unfortunately, looked at what she is leaving and therefore turned into a salt pillar. Well, it's interesting. Your teacher, Rabash, writes that a wife, the woman, is always associated with a person's desire to receive. Right, it's also a desire of Lot, but not his first 9 sfirot, but his malchut. And Lot, your teacher, also writes that in translation it means curse. What was his curse? In that he worked on being isolated from others and not to participate in any kind of communication with anyone else. But since Nonetheless, he comes from the root of Abraham, Lot. It's his cousin or uncle. And therefore he has this connection to the upper force, and therefore he could be saved, and therefore he was taken out of there. They went in, especially in order to get Lot out of there. Okay, so we went over practically all the necessary things. There are also many particular things, but still, the main message for those that will listen to this show, what should they understand? What are we talking about here? We're talking about our world that's developing toward ever more communication on all levels between all of its parts, and therefore we need to support this communication between everyone and everything. And we too, on our lessons and our dissemination, we're trying to turn to people in all languages, on all levels, so that it will be clear to them that the main thing for all of us is the relations, the mutual support, interaction, and only this way can we come to the correction of the world. So the entire Torah speaks about the correct communication between people that expressed in love another as yourself, mutual guarantee, and therefore by no means can, we stand asceticism, does it stand asceticism, etc., isolation. Right, all this needs to be in relation to yourself. Be that way towards yourself, but be very open and welcoming towards others. So if a person goes against the laws of nature, connection, etc., then nature itself, as writes Bala Sulam, as a judge, punishes him for this kind of development or lack of development. Right. Thank you very much. Till next time, all the best.